Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Babbling Irons live stream, actually, for the first time in a while, with myself and Sloth today. And we're going to be reviewing the West Ham win against Forest 3-2. Crazy game. Once again, West Ham putting us through the motion, Sloth. Bit of just a strange game that have kind of panned out. And, thankfully we got the 3 points at the end. So that's kind of all that matters when push comes to shove. But let's go to the very start, the very start. Lineups come out. We obviously had a bit of debate in the preview, which I know you dropped out of, but we were kind of trying to work out what Moyes was going to do with the lineup. Was he going to bring Antonio back in? Was he going to persist with Bowen after his recent comments? He actually did that. Bowen played up top with Kudus out on the right, Paqueta being shifted back to the left-hand side, Said Benrahma dropping back to the bench, and then we saw that midfield three that we saw early on in the season with Soucek, Ward-Prowse and Alvarez. And obviously the back four, Zuma coming back in after injury, but to be honest, he looked a little bit injured still and hobbling around the pitch. But it was the lineup most of us probably expected to see if Moyes was going to bring back in Soucek and keep Antonio out. And Paqueta's kind of been shoehorned out to that left-hand side at the moment just to fit in the players that he wants to. And obviously he trusts him a lot more than someone like Benrahma out on left wing. So going into the game before it kicked off, were you happy with that lineup, or was there anything maybe a little bit concerning that you didn't like?
No, I was pretty happy with that, and I think it might have been for the Olympiacos preview. I was saying, about keeping faith in the defenders and seeing how Moyes does that. Whether he's going to use someone like Mavropanos to rotate in more, or is he going to look to replace Aguerd? And that was the only thing that was in my head. Maybe there'd be a change there, but I think for me, that's the strongest lineup at the moment. That's the lineup you go with from now on because it's a winning side. And I just think Bowen gives you so much more energy. We look a lot more dangerous on the counter. And in terms of the strength of the side, that's what I'd like to see us take forward into the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to see like kind of that fast start, front foot press, something that we do see often at the start of matches for the first 5 to 10 minutes, and then we kind of fizzle out, which we'll get into very shortly. But it came from that high intensity to start with. The goal came from, and I think it was our fastest goal in the Premier League for about 3 years. So shows that the intent was there from the start. Obviously, a bit of good fortune how it fell to Paqueta after they tried to play out wide. It just deflected off one of their players in the process. But Paqueta held his nerve really well. He had options to his left with Bowen. He had his options to his right, but he stuck with it and he put his foot through it from outside the box, and excellent finish. And something that maybe playing Paqueta deeper doesn't allow you to see with him, because I will always maintain that I think Paqueta should be playing deeper for us, but what that does allow him to do if he's playing a little bit further forwards and roaming, off that left channel, is pick up the spaces like that and, pick up spaces where their midfield maybe don't think he's going to be. And that's exactly what happened with the goal. And, he took his strike really well, and we were 1-0 up after 3 minutes. And what was your feelings in that moment of time, Sloth?
Well, that's the perfect start, isn't it? Really, like I think Paqueta's just been fantastic this season, and we'll go into some of the issues that I think a lot of fans have with him, or where he's frustrating a lot of football fans, because he's so good, and he just does some petulant things at times. But the body movement that he makes just before he hits the ball, it's almost something that it's telling the keeper he's going to pass it out wide, and he just opens his body to do that. He's going to lay it off to someone, and then he whips a shot in really quickly, and it's a great finish. It's the sort of start to a game we want to see more of, but unfortunately what happens after that is what we want to see far less of.
Yeah, no, I was right behind the goal where that goal was for Paqueta, and I was like you, I was screaming past to Bowen because Bowen was open, and I just thought it would be an easy 1-on-1 for Bowen, but I think Paqueta disguised most of us, including their goalkeeper, in the stadium. Like you mentioned, shifting his body out wide and putting the finish into the other corner was really nicely done, and yeah, it kind of settled a lot of the nerves early on, which is obviously what you want to do. obviously scoring early, too early can maybe hurt you sometimes. And what I will say with West Ham is, I was saying it live, when we score, it's like we have this instinct and this kind of natural mechanism to kind of go back into shape and defend what you've got. And that's absolutely fine if that's how Moyes wants to play. But I just think it's counter effective for those types of matches where we've got Nottingham Forest rattled. Defensively, they don't look very good. They look much better when we're giving them time on the ball and, allowing them to move it about from side to side, one way to another, getting the ball out to Elanga a few times. And, he had Kufal pretty much on ropes in the first half, obviously picked up that yellow card. And, it was clear to see what Forest wanted to do. They wanted to exploit the gaps we were leaving, which inevitably came. And they tried to do that throughout the first half, and we got lucky on a few occasions that it didn't come off. I just think when we had the ball, we just weren't good enough. We had an opportunity, a really good opportunity to take control of the game early. And I just don't think we did that. And is that something that you feel as well? Is it just me? Do you think that we often struggle to kind of capitalize if we do go a goal up and we do, want to try and take control of a match? Or do you see us kind of just sinking back into that deep block or deeper block and trying to protect what we've got, which is a 1-0 lead?
I think it's a mixture of both. We definitely need a ruthlessness to us, and I think that it was probably might get criticised for this, but I think it was probably Kudus' worst game yet in a West Ham shirt. But I thought he was still very good going forward, and he was
very good in the first half, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the second half he just kind of, I don't know if he looked like he lost his confidence, but I think it was just a bit more sort of headless chicken. And I think when we have that sort of pace, we saw it in the first half, and when he played a really poor pass to Paqueta where he'd almost created a chance for himself on the break. And like you said, after we scored, we kind of sat back a bit. And I feel like that's really detrimental for us, because if you score so early on, there is a chance that the opposition get their heads down. But also, you that works. You know that what you're doing, if you're pressing them, if you're hassling them, it's working because you've just gone a goal up. So why would you not keep doing that? Because the more you do that and the more you attack, the harder it is for someone like Forest to finally get their tails up to think, okay, we've got a bit of time on the ball, bit of a breather, let's refocus. If you just keep pressing them, then you might not be able to do it for the full 45 minutes, but if you can do it for the first 20, 25, 30, then chances are you might be 2 up, and then it's a different kettle of fish. But I do feel like we tend to take our foot off the gas, let them come into the game a little bit more because we're willing to counter. And I just think that we should be smarter than that, and we should be pressing teams to make mistakes right after they've instantly made a bit of a howler, let's face it, like that first goal. And it was chances like the one that I mentioned where it was a poor ball from Kudus into Paqueta.
Yeah.
That was his chance. He fashioned that himself. It was a great little knockover from James Ward-Prowse into space for Kudus to run onto. But Kudus got the ball initially, played it into Prowse, and his pace takes us up the pitch. That is fantastic, and it's always going to buy you time. But that poor ball in is just what kind of killed it a bit. And I think as soon as you start lacking that bit of ruthlessness, maybe you're not fully confident to just run at a defender, or you think I'm going to lay it off to someone else. That's when the opposition has a chance to get back into it. It might just be, we've been let off a bit there. Come on, guys, let's rally and get together. Or it could be anything from, we've won that back, we defended it well. Now let's go and build upon that. So I think we need to be more ruthless and actually bury chances like that, because it was a very good chance, and I think Kudus will be frustrated in himself that it was such a poor ball.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that obviously came from a counter attack when they were pushed up. I think it's from a corner. So again, kind of plays into the fact that we take the lead, and then we try and play for those moments on the break, or not necessarily controlling a game and trying to break Forest down. It actually came from the opposite side of that. And then, you just it kind of had a lethargic feel again to it after the first 10 minutes. We were kind of sleeping through the game. Forest weren't particularly doing anything that threatening, to be honest. And we, again, likely the same. We weren't really doing much ourselves other than that kind of set piece threat when we had a couple of corners and, a couple crosses into the box. But that's where I think, like you mentioned, we're not seeing the best of the players that we currently have, and that's why I will still try and see that midfield three of Alvarez, Paqueta, and Kudus, because I think that is going to have a really nice blend. But obviously, Ward-Prowse is performing how he is at the moment. Soucek providing the goals, so I'll eat my words on that one, as we'll get into shortly. But when you're trying to play someone like Bowen striker, when his best position's right wing, and you're trying to play Kudus right wing when his best position's more centrally, and you're trying to play Paqueta, whose best position's centrally, but he's out left wing, you do have the players on the pitch to create stuff, and you do have the players on the pitch to do stuff, but it doesn't often blend as well as it can do. And I think that's why we're struggling at the moment to break teams down. I think that, Moyes alluded to him in his conference. He said the other day against Olympiacos, like we had all the flair players on, it just didn't click. And I think partly to do with that is the way that it's kind of set up and the way we're trying to play with the ball. And we're kind of getting unstuck a little bit. But as the game progressed in the first half, again, as I mentioned, it kind of went into a lull. And then you're thinking, nothing silly before half time. We often switch off just after half time, but their equaliser came just before the half time whistle. First of all, first question for you, Sloth. Was it a foul for you on Soucek? I've seen it back. Some people on social media saying it was a foul. What's your opinion on it before we kind of play out how the goal happened?
I think it's a foul. It's not booking. It's nothing more than that. But it's a foul. It's a very clear foul. He doesn't make contact with the ball. It's a very cynical. It's a cynical foul, and it's exactly the kind of thing that I'd expect a West Ham player to get called up on. It's inconsistent officiating, and I don't want to see cheap fouls given away all the time, but that is exactly the sort of thing that, even if it leads to a goal, the person in the VAR studio should be going, nah, that's an obvious foul. You've missed that. It's a clear and obvious error, because he makes no effort to play the ball. He just basically takes Soucek out.
That was my opinion on it as well.
Yeah.
I know VAR is never going to overturn those types of decisions, because it's not like he's slid in, used his feet to kind of tackle him. It's more of like an elbow or an arm into his body.
But it's a foul.
But it's still a foul. Yeah, it is. It is still a foul, and it should be called back, but it wasn't. And then obviously play continued. Emerson was caught out of position because obviously we had the ball and lost it. Kudus, after that foul happened, lost the ball in the middle of the park. A bit sloppy, to be honest, from him. And then you look at the recovery and you look at the reaction from our defense. And that kind of sums up how our defense is performing at the moment, because Emerson, again, doesn't make much of an effort to track back, but he's already caught out of position. So I'm not going to overly criticize him for that situation. Aged does his best to his defense to get over there and cover and try and stop the shot. Areola makes the save to his side. But if you go back and watch Zuma in that clip, it's really, really bad. It's really, really poor from him. He just kind of stops, does a light amble jog, back to no effort to really, no desire to try and get back in front of Awoniyi, who ends up scoring the tap in when it comes, palm to him from Areola. And that's the problem I'm seeing. We're seeing too many inconsistencies within that defense, and we're seeing too many moments where defenders are switching off. Aged's been a culprit for how many weeks now, from switching off when the ball comes into the box. Zuma's now done it, and Zuma has to now be held accountable for that, because that was a pivotal moment in the match, and he just switched off before half time, and then they make it 1-1, and they're back in the game out of nowhere.
I think it was strange as well. He almost didn't look fully fit, and I think you can take that as one of two ways. He's our most experienced defender. He's won the most in that back line, and it's because he's the captain. Moyes is just putting back in. But could it also be potentially Moyes isn't very confident in the fact that it could be Mavropanos and Aguirre together.
100%, 100%.
So I think it's a frustrating one, because of all the defenders to make a mistake, he's the one that you kind of least expect it from. And
he's the old reliable, isn't he?
Well, I think if there was a lot old about his running there, that was non-existent. But it was a shame. But you know, I will happily have that lot of an error if we still get 3 points. It's something that it's not what you want to see, and I'm sure Moyes will be absolutely fuming about it, and he will have made it known. But it was, I'm not going to say unprofessional, because that's too hard, but I don't like seeing that. One of the most frustrating things for me as a football fan is when I feel a player's lazy, or when they just half-heartedly do something. And I think, it's that is my real bugbear when that happens. And yeah, Zuma just didn't look bothered. And I think afterwards he kind of really stepped up, and you could see him talking more, and his performance went up a notch. But you know, that sort of thing, I've said before, it takes for us to concede sometimes to wake up, and it took for us to concede 2 to wake up. But it was just a case of a shot up the arse, really.
You know what I think? I don't even think it's that we need to concede to wake up. I think it's we need to go behind in a match to wake up. I think that's what we've seen for, I think, especially the majority of last season. You know, it was really frustrating because we kept going behind in matches and then reacting. It keeps happening now recently with the recent stuff that's happening. So we went into half time, obviously 1-1, still not behind in the match. Just reading out a comment from Snazzy. Evening, lads. Not a particularly great performance, but much needed 3 points. Absolutely, as we're going to get onto in the second half. Another one as well from Frankie. Have you moved house? Where's all the West Ham memorabilia? Hey, it's still here. Look, we've got the West Ham here. We've got a couple of Di Canio and Noble over there. Sloth's put me to shame with his magic behind him, but I'm building up to it. Don't worry, I'm building up to it. And yeah, let's move on to the second half, because you're thinking, all right, still 1-1, game's in a balance, home to Forest. Let's go out with the same intensity we started with at the first half. And, we will score goals against a Nottingham Forest defence that looked a little bit shaky, to be honest. It did. There was moments in that, like you mentioned, with the Kudus ball to Paqueta, could have gone 2-0 up at that moment. And there were other half chances that we were creating. So we went into the second half and just did not control the game. We gave Forest way too much respect. We allowed them to control the ball a little bit more than they did in the first half before conceding. And they started to grow in confidence. And, players like Alanga was growing in confidence. He really was coming into the game. I thought Gibbs-White was linking really well and shifting in between the lines, which we struggled to deal with. I think Aina, I think his name is, their fullback, had an excellent game for them. He really did. He showed his pace and what he can do offensively as well. So that's where their kind of goal came from. With just under half an hour to play, we were struggling. We were struggling for momentum. We were struggling to kind of create anything of note. And then they kind of hit us. And it all came from us trying to press a little bit higher. Over on the other side of the pitch, we just get outplayed. We just get played around way too easily, as it is with most of our presses at the moment. It just seems really uncoordinated. They play through, switch it over. Emerson doesn't do enough to block the cross coming in. And Alanga's just free in the middle, as you'd expect with a West Ham defence at the moment. And he finishes it really well, to be fair to him. And that was 2-1. And we were behind in the game with just under 25 minutes to go. What was going through your head then, Sloth, as we went 2-1 down?
Well, I mean, I was kind of worried about Alanga anyway. Pardon me. I was kind of worried about Alanga anyway, because he had Soufal on toast all of the first half. And, Soufal was on a booking as well. So I think he deserves a bit of commendation for the second half performance. He did really well to not dive in. And although obviously we concede this second goal, I don't think it's directly Soufal's fault. He gets skinned, and as frustrating as it is, particularly for someone who's been calling for so much pace to be added to the squad, I don't think he was directly to blame for it. And I actually think that he, for a fair chunk of the game, managed Elanga quite well, but it was just in those one-on-one sprints when he had absolutely zero chance of catching him. But there was that period, as you mentioned, in the second half of about 20 minutes, I think, when everything they did, they just seemed to knock it past us. And that extra yard of pace in Gibbs White, in a Winnie, in Ione, as you mentioned, someone we've been linked with. Apparently Moyes was quite keen to bring into the club from Torino. It's these players who have a lot of pace were really sort of exploiting our defence. And when, in my opinion, the only player who has a lot of pace at that back line is Aguerd, and he's quite error prone, I think is a bit of a worry. But I don't want to be too hard on them. You can see 2 goals and it's 9 times out of 10 you pick up a point if you're lucky, but we took 3 points and that's the most important thing. But
yeah, it was just frustrating how that goal came about, and I completely forgot to mention what happened before the goal, and they should have gone 2-1 up with Awoniyi, who put it wide somehow, and it came from our corner or our free kick high up the pitch. Emerson just kind of loops the ball back to their goalie. He actually did it twice in about 5 minutes. They just punted it forwards by their goalie, and they were in, and it was just shambolic defending once again. Letting the ball bounce. Just no coordination, no organization to how we defend when we're higher up the pitch. I think that's the biggest thing I'm taking away from this season, especially, is when we're trying to play on the front foot and we're trying to squeeze teams a little bit higher, is very unorganized. There's not much structure to it. I think we saw that against Brentford. They carved through us a lot of times. Yes, we had a couple of key players missing, but the structure wasn't there. The structure should remain the same. So we then went 2-1 behind. Forest fans start singing. Forest fans are, on cloud 9. West Ham fans start to hear groans around the stadium.
Elanga certainly was on cloud 9.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, then we literally just hoof it from the goal kick, the set piece from the restart, and then we win the corner. And you're thinking, right, it's time for set piece FC. When push comes to shove, when we need stuff to happen, get Ward-Prowse on the corners or free kicks and get it on the big man target. But it actually wasn't a big man. It was Jared Bowen who got us headed in the equaliser from the corner, literally just a minute and a half after they'd scored. So the response was great. Like you mentioned, that response to going behind, often we see it, and we saw it again. Excellent ball in from Ward-Prowse. Bowen does excellent to win the header above, a couple of really tall defenders in the box. And, he got us back in the game, and he just in really good goal scoring form at the moment, Bowen, and, another assist for Ward-Prowse.
I think it was, I said I wasn't going to be too hard on the defenders, and I'm trying not to be. But, again, we've got one of the shortest players on the pitch manages to get his head on the end of it and level it for us. And Bowen deserves a massive amount of credit for I think, just one of the most underspoken parts of his game, where he is so good in the air.
Yeah.
He's so good at directing headers into the corner of the goal and getting power on them as well. There's I think there was one header in the first half when he may have just looped it upwards, but it went straight into the goalkeeper's arms. But I think aside from that, most of the time he just manages to pick a corner. And we saw it against Liverpool when he dove for it. He is really good in the air for a guy who's not 6'7" or as tall as Soucek.
Yeah.
So it was a great delivery again, and James Ward-Prowse really impressed me yesterday. I think he deserves so much credit overall, and I still stand by some of my criticisms of him. The fact that in a 2-man midfield we do get exposed. I think we've seen that at times as well, particularly when he plays deeper.
Mm-hmm.
When he plays further forward, he just looks so much better. He doesn't have to worry about having as much defensive responsibility, but he can still get stuck in and provide what he does. But that when you have that delivery, it's absolutely priceless. I kind of made a comment that I am a bit worried it's going to be a running joke or like almost an omen, a bad omen for him to be on this record leveling free kick, but it'll come. I don't have any doubt when you can deliver something so consistently with such high quality, he'll get a goal in no time. But yes, it was good to see such an instant response, because normally with West Ham it's 5 minutes from the end, it's too little too late, and it was good to see us just get our tails up and actually have a bit of a kick up the arse.
Yeah, I think that weapon is just so powerful for us at the moment, and to be honest, we are struggling to create things from open play in those kind of situations, and if we fall behind, it's often going to be something like a set piece that's going to help us. And to Moyes' credit, if that's what's going to work and that's the weapons you've got, bloody use them. With Ward-Prowse has shown that he's got an excellent delivery. We've got our set piece mojo back, and why change something that if it's not broken? And one thing that I'm going to absolutely credit Moyes for, there's a lot of things I don't credit him for this performance, but one thing I do credit him for is the substitution he made after this, and he took Alvarez off, dropped Soucek deeper because he realized, okay, they are pretty susceptible from set pieces, and I'd rather keep Soucek on than someone like Alvarez. And Soucek can play DM, and he brings on Antonio, and he's got that extra attacking threat. But I think he kept Soucek on for the exact reason of what unfolded. 2 minutes from the end, another corner. Ward-Prowse the other side this time puts in an absolute beautiful delivery, and Soucek's at the back post, wins the header, mismatch of who he's up against, and yeah, we win it 3-2 at the death. 2 corners to save the day. Were you happy in that moment? Were you happy? Of course you were happy, but were you kind of like same old West Ham? Let's get the set piece, get the 3 points, and just move on from what was a pretty bizarre game, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to be too hard on any of the players, to be honest, and I won't be too hard on Soucek. I did think he was very poor.
Yeah,
up until that point of the game, and I think the goal kind of covers it.
It's ineffective the way he was played as a 10. I think I just don't think he should be played like that.
No, I don't think he should, and I think when he plays that deeper role, more of a DM, he adds a lot more. He brings a lot more to the table, and when we win those first balls, he's vital on there because he'll stick his head on the end of anything, and he'll jump for it, he'll fight for it. And I almost think Alvarez and Soucek, if you're, backs to the wall, you're 1-0 up, you're trying to hold the lead, perfect. But then you also need someone else who's going to be almost on the penalty spot, because Alvarez and Soucek can drop deeper. You need someone who's going to try and challenge for the ball, and that's not Ward-Prowse's area. As much as he will run, he's not going to aerially challenge for much. So I think making that change did make a big difference. Antonio put himself about, and I I think that needs to be the role that we accept for him from this point on. He needs to be that impact sub, and I would bring in a striker in January to make sure of that.
We have to bring in a striker in January.
Hey, how many windows has it been now where we've said we have to bring in a striker?
A striker that works. Let me add that.
Well, there we go.
That works. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I think what we've seen with Antonio now is he's starting to obviously decline because of his age. The demands of what he's being asked is a lot now, to be fair to him. But he just looks bereft of confidence, to be honest. I mean, that miss against Brentford's a prime example of that. He mentioned in his podcast after, he couldn't sleep, and it's something he really wanted to do. So I don't think his heart isn't in the right place. I just think, his ability is just not there anymore. And we, as a club, we should be moving past relying on him for what he is currently available to offer for us. And it's why I think Moyes is now playing Bowen striker, because A, he knows he's going to work harder. B, he knows he's probably going to finish more chances. And C, he's just, in much better form than Antonio. So It's an interesting one. We definitely need to sign a striker in January because I think Bowen looks a lot better on the right. I'd like to have that, that clinical striker, a bit younger, someone who's going to work hard and allows, Kudus to come inside and play inside a bit more. But yeah, that's a whole new different topic as we go into the transfer window. But we got the 3-2 win, 3 points, back up into the top half of the Premier League before the international break. Man of the match, Sloth, who kind of stood out amongst some pretty poor performances across the board, but we got the win. Who's your man of the match?
Well, I think before I say that, a big shout out goes to Areola's save, which for me is save of the season so far.
Completely forgot about that.
That stunning one-handed save from a header, just sensational stuff. And for me, that's why he has to be the number one. Yeah. And it's not a dig at Fabianski. I just don't see him saving that. I think that was a truly stunning save. So that's my moment of the match, in my opinion. Man of the match, I think I'm going to say James Ward-Prowse, because I think he looked not just like an engine house in that midfield. He looked really good on the ball. Every time he had it, he seemed to find a man. And again, that delivery from set pieces is just priceless. It's constantly dangerous. It's always going to cause problems. And I'm probably not the only West Ham fan who felt this, but when I saw us take a first short corner in the first half, I actually put my head in my hands and just went, oh God, no, what are we doing? But I was so happy to see that change. So yeah, he's my man of the match, and I thought he was fantastic yesterday.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. When he provides 2 assists like that, he's the game changer. Without him, we probably lose that game. So definitely the man of the match for me. And like you mentioned, shout out to Areola for that save. It was unbelievable. He won save of the season last month, I think, for his stop against Villa, and he's probably tied it up for November now for himself as well. But yeah, before we leave, a little comment from Richard saying evening to you, Richard. This has been a good, educated chat. You haven't given me a migraine like everybody else. I mean, we'll absolutely take that as a positive, Sloth. And yeah, glad to have you on the live stream. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed. 3 points, we take it going into the international break, and hopefully we can build on it. I mean, we said we want 9 points from the next 3 games that we play in the Premier League. We've got 3 of them, 6 more to go. And hopefully we can wrap it up with wins against Burnley and Palace after the break. So, yeah, thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like on the live stream if you are new around here. And yeah, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because that massively helps us out. And yeah, thank you for tuning in for the evening. Sloth, thank you for coming on as well. And yeah, one thing for us left to say.
Come on, you irons.